over the years, I built up all this passive income, and it enabled me to say, after 10 years of being at Fox, bye-bye, I'm done. I don't want to wake up at 3:30 in the morning any longer, and retired at 40 years old.
Hey guys and gals, this is Trevor with Carrot coming at you with another episode of the CarrotCast. And I've got a guest on with me today that I've been following for some time. And many of you guys may actually recognize his face, but in a different context. And I'm going to introduce you here to Clayton Morris here in a second. But what I'm really excited about is we're gonna dive into Clayton's story on how he actually just became full-time as an entrepreneur just recently, just in the last couple of weeks. But what we want to do is I want to unpack the mindset and the application of how he got there, and also dig into that decision a little bit. And passive income is Clayton's world. So I really want to dive into that in a big way. But let's welcome Clayton Morris onto this episode of the CarrotCast. Clayton, welcome aboard, man.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Trevor. Real treat to be here. And I'm a big fan of what you've done and a big fan of the show.
Well, thanks, man. And just give people some context here. So let's start off with what's your family life look like? Are you married? You have kids? What have you been doing the last decade of your life?
Well, like this afternoon, I had a whole bunch of meetings this morning.
Yeah.
I was driving down from we have a place up in the mountains, and I went up there to kind of check on it and just get a night to myself. Mm-hmm. My wife and I like to do that once in a while. I'll be like, hey, you just go for the night. We've got 3 kids. Sleep in, have a nice night to yourself, read a book, and then when you've slept in, come on home. So I did that. That was my turn last night. I went up there, shut off my phone, shut everything down, and just hung out, did some reading and relaxing and watching Rob Lowe. I don't know if you've seen that new paranormal show where he goes in the woods with his kids and they look for Bigfoot. So watching that, relaxing. Then on my way back today, I just call after call after call, met my wife for lunch to talk about some really interesting real estate strategies that we're employing right now. Cool. And got home, and the kids have an in-service day today, and my 2 kids, my older kids, ran up to me and said, Daddy, push me on the backyard swing. And I said, yep. You know why? Because I have passive income. I work from home. I can do whatever I want to do. And so that's that's kind of a typical day, except normally they're in school.
Cool. So I saw last couple of weeks, was it 2 Fridays ago, was your last day on the job of your previous job. And let's what was that job, man? And it wasn't the normal job that you're going and punching the clock, but what was that job? And let's dive into that decision on making it go full time.
So I've been in television for 18 years, broadcast television. And I started out as a production assistant out in Los Angeles on Good Day LA, a morning show, and lived all over the country. Went up to Montana, was a political reporter for CBS News, then to NBC News in West Virginia and Virginia. And then eventually I made it to the network. And when you get to the network, you're like, yeah, that's it. That's where I'm going to spend the rest of my days. So I was at Fox News Channel, the #1 cable channel in the world. I was on the #1 morning show in the world on cable news on Fox and Friends. And I'd been there about 10 years. But I'd lost my job in Philadelphia when I worked at Good Day Philadelphia about 10 years ago. I was hired to come in and make their morning show fun and hip and young again. Right. Okay. That's why I was hired. I get there, and my news director who hired me was fired a week later.
Oh, man.
So now, I had no internal support. She had this great sense of humor, and then they bring in this, little Weasley guy who just wanted to do all murder, right off the top of the show. And that wasn't I don't want to do that. So who wants to wake up to that every morning over their Cheerios, Yeah. So they didn't renew my contract, and they said, basically, you're out of a job. And I flashed back to being 12 years old and watching my dad lose his job. And it changed my whole life. I mean, watching him, I was terrified. I saw him sort of really upset in the kitchen that day, pacing around with my mom, and he was getting angry, and he was going to take it to them, going to get a lawyer, and they just downsized. There wasn't anything he could do about it, And I just remember how terrified he was. But of that rich dad, poor dad philosophy, I grew up with him in that poor dad role. I mean, we were never wanting. We had a great middle class life, and I had a great childhood. But his way of building wealth mentality was of the poor dad philosophy, which is get a job, work hard, and build wealth by getting a raise every few years and putting a little bit of money in retirement. And so I flashed back to him losing his job when I lost my job, and I said, from that moment on, no one is going to be the ruler of my kingdom. I am going to control my own destiny. And that's when I started really deep diving real estate investing, looking to get into buy and hold real estate and creating passive income. So over the years, I built up all this passive income, and it enabled me to say, after 10 years of being at Fox, bye-bye, I'm done. I don't want to wake up at 3:30 in the morning any longer, and retired at 40 years old.
Dude, so one thing I find so interesting is this, where I went and watched the episode that was your last time on Fox and Friends here a couple weeks ago, and there's this interesting dynamic, right, between the people who have made that mindset shift of I do have control, and here's what control looks like, and I'm not okay with having this risk, which you and I, obviously, and many people listen to this podcast, we see the risk as me not taking the chance to start this thing, versus a lot of people see risk as I'm taking the chance to start this thing. And looking at your co-hosts, and I don't know any of them personally, and I'm not going to judge any of that, but looking at the co-host and some of the comments from people, I'm like, man, what's going through their minds seeing you on this journey and you take this leap, and do they feel that they're at their pinnacle? And like you mentioned, they don't have anywhere to grow. And is that a disempowering feeling? And have you had any of your colleagues reach out to you to wonder what you're doing?
Well, it's funny. You're right about that. I think so many of those news anchors at Fox have come to me over the years and said, I'm interested in what you're doing, but I would give them advice on where to invest or what to do, and what I do at my company, Morris Invest. So, great homes, $40,000, $50,000 renovated with a cash flow, right? Taxes are really low. So that's what I do. And I would drive, you can lead a horse to water, right? But then you find, I had one co-host tell me, she's like, well, no, I think my husband and I we're just going to buy $1 million apartment in New York City and rent it out. And I said, great. That is literally the opposite of what I just said to you. Yeah. You're going to take a $1 million mortgage out on a Manhattan apartment in an A-class neighborhood where we saw what happened during the last recession in New York City, right? When all of those banks fail, all that stuff, you had rents for $3,800 a month plummeted down to like $1,800 a month. So if your mortgage is $4,200 a month, you're in trouble, or $3,800, you're in deep trouble if you're leveraged. And so there's that dynamic. But then after I made that announcement that day, because I never really talked much about it, I had one of our meteorologists come over to me, and he goes, you're not going to believe this, but last week I started reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it's in my office right now. And I saw your tweet about leaving, and I was like, why is Clayton leaving? What's going on here? Is he sick? What's happening? And he's like, and then I started looking at your website, and I started realizing, wait a minute, he did it. He did it. And he said, he said he's 32. He said, look, in a few years, I want to be exactly where you are right now. So he goes, I'm going to call you. So you have that, two different dynamics. People think that they know better. And then people, they're like, I'm ready. I see it in action. I'm ready to go.
Dude. So I want to roll back to, so you had the moment where you were fired from the job. Your mindset had that shift. And I think this right here is where a lot of people have the problem is okay, that you want this, that you want the Rich Dad, Poor Dad lifestyle, you want the passive income, you want to add security to your life. You're not sure what the first steps are. So what did you do? So right now you're buying, of course, homes in that price range, you're renting them out. We'll talk more about the specifics of that. And your company helps other people do that. So I want to dive into that in deep detail and how people can work with you, where they can go. I mean, I want people to go work with you if they really resonate with this model. But what were those first steps for you to really get it going?
So really the first steps where buy and hold real estate for me all started, because I had done some flips before that and lost a lot, gone through a foreclosure. I went through some dark times, trying to do some speculative stuff years ago. Then I wiped the slate clean. And when I got to Fox in Philadelphia and then lost my job is when I kind of rebooted things. Then the network came calling, said, you know what? We don't care that you were just let go by one of our Fox affiliates. There's a big separation here between church and state. We'd like you to come work for the network. I said, great. That's a good trade-in, right? That's a good upgrade. I'll trade in that car for this one any day of the week, you know? So, but I still had that foreclosure on my record. I still had, terrible credit as a result of what I've gone through in Florida. And I started saving up money, so I had to get kind of creative with how I was going to approach, investing. So I then I decided to take a little vacation. And this is the vacation that changed my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I was on a flight by myself to New Zealand. My wife had the kids. She said, just go. I was going to go visit my friend who's a photographer, one of the great photographers in the world. And he invited me to his house in New Zealand. I'm on this flight. It's like a 16-hour flight from San Francisco when I was flying out of. And I was next to a couple in their 50s. And we got to talking after about 15 hours. We were all sleepy and groggy. And we got to talking, and he said, "Oh, how long are you going to be in New Zealand for?" I said, "Oh, I'm going to be there for about 5 days." He said, 5 days? That's a quick trip. I said, "Yeah, that's all I got to get back for work and everything." And I said, "What about you guys? How long are you going to be in New Zealand?" And he said, he and his wife looked at each other and said, "Oh, we're going to be there for 2 months." I said, "What in the world? What do you guys do that you can go to New Zealand for 2 months?" You know? And he said, "Oh, I'm a real estate investor." And I said, "Okay, hold on. Let's slam the brakes on. Let me get out my pad and paper, get my pen out." And for the next hour, I just picked his brain about where he was buying. He said, "Oh, my partner and I buy, in C-class and B-class neighborhoods and, these markets and this price range. And we renovate the property, put, tenants in there, et cetera." And he goes, "I don't care about real estate. I only care about return on investment, cash flow, ROI." And I said, "Okay, I'm in." So as soon as I got back, I immediately found 2 properties, probably paid too much for them. I over upgraded them. I did everything wrong, right? But the point is, I had some money in the bank and I bought 2 properties. That was for me the start of it. And I renovated them, put in, additional bells and whistles that I shouldn't have. And those properties have been cash flowing for me ever since. That was the start of everything for me. And I have never looked back. I've never really switched from that model of what I do, single family homes and a few duplexes in those markets. And that's what I do all day long.
Man, so you mentioned your model, and that's something that a lot of people, they kind of have this shotgun approach, right? Where they do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and they almost dabble in real estate too much and all these different types where they can't really build momentum in the model that they have. And I was listening to one of your episodes of the podcast, and I highly suggest everyone go to iTunes and go subscribe to Clayton's podcast, Investing in Real Estate with Clayton Morris. I was mentioning to Clayton here a bit ago, we're renovating our house, and was doing some painting stuff. And man, whenever I do that kind of stuff, I go on a podcast binge. And man, your podcast is just awesome. It was
Thank you.
Very applicable. It's I love it when your wife and you are both on there kind of riffing back and forth, because it's really sweet, dude. I love it because it's really fun seeing that dynamic and how you guys are a unit on the financial side. And I think we can all have a lot to learn, as married couples to go, you know what, this isn't something that just this person runs or just this person runs. It should be something we run together. And I want to talk about that here in a little bit. But on your podcast, you talked about your decision to leave your job, to going from something that a lot of people look at as secure to this new model, not new model. You've been running it for almost a decade now. Is really more secure. And you guys were kind of going through that whole decision on, oh man, there's this mindset that we have implanted in our brains that we've got to have a job or that paycheck coming in every week, because that's more security. And then you guys work the numbers out and it's like, man, it doesn't make sense for me to do that anymore. To give people some context, share whatever you're willing to share, but to give people some context, what did it take for you financial wise in order to go, okay, this is now the route where I should really be investing all of my time into work wise? Was there a number that you found? Was it when I replaced my income? Like kind of how was your equation there?
So the thing, and I give it away for free on my website. So
Cool.
If you're driving right now or you're watching this right now and you don't have time, but I give it away on my website, just morrisinvest.com/freedom. You can download the thing that changed my life. And this is honest to God, hand to the heavens, what changed my life. I had those 2 properties that I'd purchased after my New Zealand trip, right? But I still wasn't able to pay the mortgage. Here I am, a network news anchor, and yet we were not managing our money appropriately. And my wife came to me in my home office and she said, we can't pay the mortgage this month.
Yeah.
And I said, you got to be what? And I started crying. I was like, you got to be kidding. Because here I am, like I grew up with all these fears around money. Money doesn't grow on trees. We're not the Rockefellers. We can't afford that. And so I have these negative associations with money that I had to work on overcoming my whole life. So it's very important about the way we talk about money with our children, because this stuff, trust me, stays ingrained in you. Then you have to go to therapy to get it out of you. So I was sitting there, I said, this is ridiculous. What are we doing wrong? And I had to go into my closet and sell some of my, I had like a couple of pairs of jeans I had to sell, on Craigslist. I had to sell some of my old camera in order to pay our mortgage that month. No joke. And I said, wait a second. We have these 2 properties. They're bringing in $800 a month each. We've had them now for a year and a half or so, and they've been fine for it. Why? What if we could figure out how many of those it would take for us to be financially free? Yeah. So I jumped up on my whiteboard, and she and I, over a couple glasses of wine, mapped out this idea of the freedom number. And we said, okay, look, here's our monthly expenses. And that's exactly what my little cheat sheet does for people. It just it shows you how to do it step by step. Cool. So figure out your monthly expenses, get honest with yourself. I mean, I'm telling you, you're going to discover that you're paying 2 times for Netflix subscriptions, or you're going to find stuff once you start going through your credit card receipts and your statements that, wait, why are we paying for Hulu and this other thing? Why are we paying for this newspaper subscription that we don't get anymore? You're going to start to see all this stuff add up. What does that number look like? And then what is the cash flow that would actually cover you every month? So it comes down to this for me. And to answer your question a long-winded way is, most people say when you ask them, what kind of money do you want? Most people will say, I want to be a millionaire. Why? Yeah. Most people only need a certain amount of cash flow every month in order to be financially free. That to me is financial security. That's financial freedom. So being able to put, is it $3,000 a month in cash flow would cover and make you happy? You don't need to have $1 million. What if you had consistent monthly cash flow from rental properties? And that to me was the paradigm changer for me. And
dude, and that right there is funny. So I bought my first rental property when I was in college. I was 21. And I was in this mindset of I wanted to invest in real estate. I didn't know what or how, and I graduated college in 2005, so it was right during that uptick of the market before it crashed. And everyone's flipping houses and things like that. So that's what I thought I wanted to do. But then, kind of similar to you, but you did it in a lot more structured way. And I want people to go to your website and grab that cheat sheet to work out their freedom number. It's just something I think is so important and fundamental to us, having that one extra thing in our life that leads towards us being free. The freedom number, it's not just about your income. It's about you being free as an individual and as a person and family. But when I started to shift my mindset on the investing side, I'm like, man, I don't want to have to go out there and make active income with real estate where I've just got to be on that hamster wheel churning it all the time. And that's where I started looking at and going, okay, I definitely want to build up a portfolio. Now, I haven't done it as good or as an intentional job as you have. And that's something I'd love to kind of unpack and map out that model for people on this call so they can just go, okay, here's exactly what I need to do. Here's the types of properties that work like this. And here's where I can go. And maybe some formulas or whatever that they can quickly, simply look at to go, okay, here's, some actionable stuff. But this right here is so important because now that I'm 35 now, I've got businesses that do really, really well. And I do have some passive cash flow, but not anywhere near I would if I was intentional from the start. And that's one of the reasons I want to have you on here is going, okay, one of my goals leading into 2018, we're recording this in the fall of 2017, is we've got amazing cash flow coming from the businesses. But if something happens over there, if something happens with the business, that's gone. And so we need to be taking cash flow from our active income, put it over here into passive assets. And I'm trying to relearn some things I learned a decade ago, but there's this period in my life where I didn't acquire anything for 4 or 5 years. And I want to pick it back up. So if someone is to go out there and let's say they make a modest income, let's say household income is, and we'll kind of go with a couple examples, let's say, but let's say household income is, around $100,000 between the two of them a year. What would you suggest that people do if their goal is to get to, I don't know, let's say, $2,000 to $4,000 a month in passive cash flow within the next X amount of years? Are there places they should be looking for? What types of properties? How do they buy them? Do they buy them with cash? Do they buy them leveraged? Kind of what are you guys doing?
So a lot to unpack there. And as you know, in real estate investing, there's no one way to skin a cat, right? And so when I look at that scenario with that couple that has a modest income, they make $100,000, they want to get to $2,000 to $4,000 a month in passive cash flow. Well, a couple of questions. Do they own the house they live in, right? They own the house they live in. Maybe they have enough equity in that house to pull out a small home equity line of credit. That small home equity line of credit could be considered cash, right? Because it's, you have the credit line. You could do with it what you want. Well, you might not have $50,000 to purchase a property. But what if you have, $15,000 that you're then able to buy into an investment property? So now, yes, you have some leverage on it from however you're doing it, but then you are accelerating that. So I like to think of it the 3 stages of real estate investing, which is, and I talk about this and beat this drum on my website and my podcast, which is buy, own, and cash flow. Now, yes, we want to get to the cash flow stage, right? But if you follow sort of Gary Keller's model of becoming a millionaire real estate investor, the first stage is to buy however you can. If you're 30, if you're 40, if you're 50, buy. If you're in your 70s now, then we want to get to that cash flow stage more quickly. But you should just be worried about now. You're probably working. You probably have a decent job. You probably like what you're doing, or in part you do. And you want to see retirement in 5, 8, 10 years. Great. Let's worry about acquiring enough assets that go on our balance sheet to get us to that million, right? So when I acquire a $50,000 house, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm paying cash for it, but now I've increased my net worth by $50,000. Buy another one. Now I've now increased my net worth to 100,000. And that's how wealthy people see wealth. They're not looking at, the paycheck. They're not looking at a monthly paycheck. They're looking at the net assets. What is my balance sheet? What am I worth? You ever hear rich people talk? It's like, what am I worth? That's what they're talking about. When you open that spreadsheet and they've got 40 properties that are worth, 50,000 each or 100,000 each. But guess what? Somebody else's money was used in order to buy those properties. Maybe they used a small portion of their cash to purchase one of them, and then they pull the money back out by refinancing that property. So let's just say that couple, for real world numbers and facts, let's say they have between them, they've saved up $30,000, right? In some capacity, whether it's a retirement account, they've got that in their 401k, something like that. You can take a loan from your 401k, not withdrawing it, take a loan from your 401k to maybe use as a down payment to purchase a property. You could use, if you've got an IRA, you could do the same thing. You could ask Uncle Timmy, for some private money, put together a little presentation, how you're going to put down 20% and Uncle Timmy's going to carry the rest for 80% of that with a 6% note, 5% note for 5 years. And in that amount of time, the rent will have paid off Uncle Timmy. There's so many different ways if you just get creative. And on my YouTube channel, I have a whole playlist that I built called "Private how to Get Private Money." So it's like multiple videos on walking people through step by step how to get private money. We give you everything, like the point by point on how to do it. So there's so many different ways that you can do it. I mean, acquiring money through private money, or acquiring money through private money in order to purchase real estate, using a bank, using commercial loans, and buying a portfolio of properties all at once, and then using the equity in those properties and pulling that equity out and snowballing it. So we'll have investors that start with one property. They pull the equity out of that first one to buy the second, and they just snowball it. And before you know it, they've got 20 properties.
So in that snowball, I'm sure you guys have podcast episodes that dive deeper into these strategies, I'm assuming, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, because there's so many different ways to do it. So we have an episode where we talk about, for instance, one of our investors just did this. He bought a property from us in August, I think, for $45,000. We renovated it, placed a tenant in it, and he refinanced it. And the appraisal came in at 53. He pulled the equity right back out and he bought another property. So like that's a typical goal with us for the investors that we work with. And we try to help people do it where you think outside the box with real estate investing. Don't just think of Fannie and Freddie loans at Bank of America. I frankly think that's like the worst way to go. There's so much private money out there. If you just figure out how to tap into that, go to your local RIA meetings. Again, follow my playlist where I walk you through getting your presentation together. Go to present to them. Here's the property that I plan to buy, this package of 5. Would you fund 80% of it? I'm putting 20% of my own money into it. Boom. You call the terms. You control the situation.
Dude, and that right there is something I want people to really latch on to, because the first property I bought was owner carry and then private money to come in for the down payment. And I was a college kid. I didn't have any money, right? And I made it work, and we still own that one. It's been cash flowing since day one. And also on the other side of it now, I'm a private lender, and just because there's this mindset block a lot of people have of, well, why would someone want to lend me money in this circumstance versus doing X with it? And I know for a guy like me, where I've got my financial strategy planned out, where I have money allocated towards those types of things, where I really need to find people that I trust that I can lend money to on the real estate side, because that's what I understand. So at any given time, I've got $100,000 to $200,000 out there as private loans churning with some of the investors that I work with. So go out there and find those people, guys and gals, because there are people that are already around you. You just need to start talking with them about the opportunities that you have and things like that. So let's talk markets, right? Because you've been talking dollar amounts of houses, and some people might be going, man, I could not sniff a house for 40 to 50 grand. Right. And you live in is it New Jersey or New York?
New Jersey, just outside of Manhattan. Okay,
cool. So my assumption is at those prices, you're probably not buying there. So where in your country, or where in the country, are you kind of focusing on right now as far as buying the properties that are cash flowing well for you?
Yeah, so we're in some markets in Florida. I love Indiana. I love Michigan. The first two properties I ever bought were in Michigan. And those, what I like, and I like Ohio and, some areas like that as well. I don't like areas that have, high vacancy rates and high crime rates and stuff like that. But again, people have to live everywhere. So when you even got like areas with like high crime, but guess what? People still need to live somewhere. So, I'm not that, even like high crime areas to me, I'm in New Jersey. If you look like a heat map of like my home, even though I'm in like an A-class neighborhood, guess what? The heat map is still going to show that there's crime nearby. So those websites are pretty worthless, but people like to look at those things to talk themselves out of taking action on investing in real estate. So for me, my typical neighborhood, and again, I do videos where I drive down the streets of my my properties. They're boring. I mean, honest to God, everyone's at work during the day. They're 1,000 square foot single family homes with a yard and a driveway, and you've got the local American based jobs. Now this is the key. So I'm in areas where you have some of the #1 job markets in the country for American based jobs. I'm talking Amazon distribution center just built, the new public hospitals that are nearby. So a lot of our tenants, are nurses and so forth. Postal employees that rent from us. You have the local, Raytheon factory, Rolls-Royce aircraft engine factory. You have the, NCAA headquarters. You have convention centers, not jobs that are going overseas. You have the FedEx distribution hub right there, American-based distribution jobs. And that's what I love those are the types of properties I'd like to be around. They're not sexy. They're not big. They have a few moving parts. We don't even put in appliances on our properties. Our tenants provide their own appliances. I don't have garage door openers. I don't have garbage disposals. They're, I like to think of them as sort of rock solid, repair-free environments for me for many, many years. I just don't have a lot of repairs to worry about.
Dude, so that's key right there, right? So I think a lot of people if they own rental properties, there's the appliances there and things like that oftentimes are the things that need repairs, right? And one of my properties, just in the past year, I've replaced 2 appliances so far. And that right there, dude, is a really good thing for people to write down, is going, okay, what are those things that are the high maintenance possibilities in our units, and can we rent these without those? So do you find that you're having to bump rents down when you don't include appliances, or you don't, and it's just part of the market? Okay.
It's part of the market. And that's sort of my early mistakes. When I first, did my first properties in Michigan, I put all the appliances in there. I called up Home Depot and, overpaid for appliances and had them delivered to my, to my overly upgraded 3-bedroom, 1-bath house. Now I don't do it. And now, tenants, they buy a package of appliances that they own. They take care of them. There was a time, I'd be running around dealing with heating elements going out on that stove, on this thing, and, no more. You want a stove, you want refrigerators, you want a window unit for air conditioning, you provide it. I don't even do central air in my properties. Because guess what? My tenants don't want it either. They don't want to cool the entire house and pay that electric bill.
Yeah.
They'd rather have the window unit in the bedroom where they're sleeping, or the living room where they're watching TV with the family. They don't want to cool the entire house. And so, you learn these things as you go along to not overspend. The property is going to cash flow whether or not you've spent the additional money or not.
Dude, so there's some markets you gave, people can start to key in on those. But now the next step comes going, okay, sweet, I know where I should look and I know the types of things I should look for. Great employment bases. I'm sure there's other criteria you look for. But then how do people actually go acquire those properties if they're not living in those areas? So I know your business does that for people. So that's one way. Go check out morrisinvest.com and see their model, learn what they're doing. But how are you guys going out and acquiring properties? I'm sure you're doing a bunch of marketing. Are you buying them on the MLS and making sure that they pencil? Kind of how are you guys acquiring these properties?
Yeah, we'll do it any number of ways. I'll have, wholesalers bring me deals occasionally. And if they haven't marked up the price too much and I know that I'm going to have to put $20,000 of rehab into it, I need to make sure that I hit between a 10 and 12% net ROI. Okay. So every property I buy, I reverse engineer it from there. So I want to hit a net 10 to 12% return. Okay. On every property. Now that means, so if I'm looking at a property, someone sends me and the foundation is falling apart, right? It's going to cost me $6,000 to fix the foundation. Well, chances are, as affordably as our houses are, there's no way that I'm going to be able to make those numbers work. So I'll just pass on the property. Somebody else can pick it up, So wholesalers I'll pick it up from. I'll buy, a bulk lot of them from some failed hedge fund. I'll buy 20 properties at a time. We will acquire them. I can count on one hand the number of foreclosures that I've bought in the past year because those have almost dried up completely. I don't really get those anymore, but those used to be pretty hot, short sales and things like that. And just general marketing for properties. So many, look, people write to me all the time and they say, I like to say the best properties are not in your backyard because chances are they probably aren't. But if you happen to be in, Kansas City or St. Louis or, in those areas and you can get a deal that makes sense, you have to really be honest with yourself. Are you a hands-on investor? If you're a hands-on investor, then don't call my company. Yeah. Like Morris Invest, I'm just going to say it right now. We don't want to work with you because we don't want you picking out drywall and paint colors and telling us how to do what we do best, right? But if you're hands-off and you don't want phone calls and you want somebody else to do all of it for you, then give us a call. But be honest with yourself because there will be people that want to be those weekend warriors that want to spend their Saturdays and Sundays hunting for properties in their backyard. Yeah. Focus on ROI. Like I learned on that New Zealand flight, ROI is king and cash flow is king. So if the numbers make sense, if the ROI is there, then jump at it.
So you're talking about ROI. Are there certain types of quick calculations you guys do when you're looking at a property where there's the purchase price, there's the rents that it will get? Kind of what do you guys look at and what quick calculations do you guys usually do?
So it's very, very fast. So this is my back of the book envelope calculation. Cool. Look, just take the monthly rent times 12. Okay. What's the monthly potential rent going to be times 12? And then I take out a ridiculously conservative 40%. I have a lot of people that make fun of me for that because it's so conservative. And I include repairs, vacancies, expenses in that 40%. So monthly rent times 12 times 0.6, that'll take out that 40%. Okay. Then I'm going to divide that. That's my number. I'm going to divide that by the all-in cost of the house. So if the house is $50,000, that to me, and then you'll have 0.11 or 0.12 or whatever your number is, then just multiply that times 100 to give you your percentage. Is it 11%, 12%? And that's your net return. And I like to say, because our houses are renovated and because we're placing a tenant in the property, that 40% is kind of a real conservative number. So at the end of the year, you look at your spreadsheets and you're always sort of pleasantly surprised because it's more like 20% return that you got that year.
Are you figuring debt service into that as well, or is that not figured in?
I don't, because everyone's debt service is different, right? Your mileage may vary. So that to me is the ROI. And debt service has nothing to do with ROI. Debt service is a cash flow question. Okay. So how will it affect your cash flow? Right. Now, if I've got a $300 mortgage involved in that scenario and it's cash flowing $700 and I've minus my 40%, does that mean I'm cash flowing $100 or $200 above my mortgage note? Great. If so, then jump on it. Again, Gary Keller's millionaire real estate model is if it cash flows $1 above all of your leverage points, Great. You know why? Because you'll have it paid off in a few years, and then you'll be cash flowing fully. It's the buy, own, and then cash flow phase, of real estate investing.
Dude, that's good. That's good right there. So if you guys can reverse that last minute or two, write down that formula that Clayton mentioned, because it's a simple formula. But the cool thing is that you're zeroing in on what you mentioned that's most important, which is ROI. It's that formula kicks out the ROI, and then you decide how you're going to then acquire it. If you have a debt service there, work that in on your own end so you know what the cash flow looks like at the end of the day. So, dude, that's sweet. Man, in the thing I love about this, like I said, is it's so repeatable, right? It's something where you don't have to go buy this one ginormous apartment building that's this home run that one building makes it work. You go, this transaction's not a huge one. I can make this work, do that, rinse, repeat until you've reached your freedom number or something like that. So I know you left your job. I'm going to circle back a little bit ago. You left your job. I know you guys had your freedom number. Are you guys still acquiring properties? Did you bump your freedom number up now? Kind of what do you do when you start to hit those freedom numbers?
Yeah, I want to increase our number, right? I would love to increase our overall performance, of course. And I like to think of the freedom number as one stage. And then the legacy number as the next stage. Like, what am I going to leave for my kids? Am I going to leave them just enough that they can cover their monthly bills, or am I going to leave them a substantial portfolio that can really, help, drive a lot of things for them? Help our community, all of those things. So for me, it's like about building that legacy now. We bumped that number up, but we're also diversifying. We're doing different things with notes and different things. So we're spreading our portfolio out over multiple sort of ways of investing in real estate. And that's exciting for me to learn those new avenues and different things. And then also, we're spending some time working on some new books and writing and talking about how other people can hit the financial freedom number as well. It's an exciting time. It's a little nerve-wracking because I was joking before we even started that this idea that the 9-to-5 job, everyone gets scared to think, oh, you're going to leave the safety net of the 9-to-5 job. It's actually scarier to stay in a 9-to-5 job. You're beholden to somebody else who at any moment pull the plug on you and tell you you're gone. That to me is scarier. But we have this sort of mental perception of the 9-to-5 job as being this security blanket, when in fact it really isn't.
Oh man, I was talking with one of my friends just in the past month, and one of my life list items, my first life list in 2010, and one of my life list items was to help 4 friends or family members get away from jobs that they hate to things that they really enjoy. And I've helped 2 so far, and one of them works for me, and he just absolutely loves what he's doing now. He's fired up about it, does such a great job. And the other one I helped. And I still have a lot of friends that reach out to me and they'll talk about, you can see they're curious about what they see, right? They see that it seems like there's more freedom, flexibility. They see that it seems like you're growing your future, not in a stagnant job. But when we came out of college, the interesting thing was all those people got their jobs, those well-paying jobs, $50,000, $60,000 paying jobs out of college. I made like 15 grand that first year out of college. And they looked at it the other way. It's like, man, I've got this secure thing. I'm happy. Look at Trevor, taking those risks. And that was one thing I had to recognize early on, was that my risk profile was just a completely different risk profile than most other people. And I think it really serves people to flip that risk profile in a big way, like you guys have. In a big way. So a couple more questions for you, man, then we'll bounce. And like I said, guys and gals, there's so much wealth of information that Clayton and his wife have to share in their podcast, Investing in Real Estate with Clayton Morris. Go find it on iTunes. There's lots of good stuff in there. One of my favorite ones, because it's probably timely, was the one where you talk about how you guys are kind of helping your kids invest, and you have younger kids, but you have the retirement accounts and you're starting to build those up, and you gave some really solid strategies that people can employ if you do it right to help build up wealth, but also save some taxes and some cool stuff. So it's a lot more than what we've talked about here. There's a lot of personal finance stuff in there too. So go check it out, guys and gals, if you're interested in sharpening your personal finance and financial world. But I want to ask about this question, because a buddy of mine is in business with his wife. We were just talking yesterday, and they own a brewery together that they started here in our entrepreneur co-work space, and it's doing really well. But just like with any spouses, if they're working together, there's the struggles. I gather that you and your wife work together in the business, correct?
Right.
Dude, so What have you found it works really well for you guys to be just a great team and a great dynamic in there and not have it bleed over into the sacred family time?
It's a great question. We really try to carve out date nights where, yes, we can go and just have fun, right? But then we also try to really have business lunches and go out like today and really, sit down with a plan, sort of an agenda of what we're going to talk about. And, we're still having fun, right? Because we get to talk about this stuff. But as a business expense, right? We're running a business. It's a family business, but we're running a business. And so it's totally appropriate for us to sit down and have a lunch meeting and map that out. And then when we're in family time, when the kids are all yelling at the dinner table and we're all yapping back and forth, telling stories and having fun and making jokes and whatever, don't bring up business. You know why? Because you're going to get cut off. Someone's going to step on your voice. You're not going to be able to finish the thought. And it's just a waste of time, right? Yeah. So when you have 3 kids, right, that there's no way you're going to get a word in edgewise with this stuff. So you kind of have to get in and get out. No one gets hurt. That's the way I look at it. But we've come, we each have strengths. My strengths are not in the spreadsheets. I'll tell you that right now. The Excel spreadsheets, looking at the numbers, diving into all that stuff makes my eyes water. I'm the big picture guy, right? I'm the guy who comes up with the plan. We're going to acquire these 10 properties, and here's what I want to close on it. Now, honey, can you figure out where to pull the money from, which account we're going to use, how we're going to put this together, this deal together, and all of that. And that's how we work really well together. She's the first to admit she's not the big picture person. She's like, I probably wouldn't take action on these big items at all if it weren't for you finding them. And then I'm the non-details person, which is great. I got the big idea. Now, how do we put all these things together? And I have to map it out, on my whiteboard and all the different steps and processes to get there. I use the GTD method. I don't know if you use Getting Things Done by David Allen. Yeah. So I'm a big proponent of using GTD as a productivity mechanism for me because I struggle with it. I really struggle with discipline of getting these big projects done. When you break them down into simple steps, it's amazing how much can get done. Dude,
have you ever taken the Kolbe score or the Kolbe test? KOLBE?
No, I haven't. I'll be scared to take it.
Man, so I did a whole podcast episode on this because you and I are very, very similar, where I thrive on the visionary side of it. I thrive on strategy. I struggle in implementation, right? Like when it actually comes time to get the thing done, I'll have 6 different things halfway done because I'm really looking at strategy and vision and things like that. And we went through, and this is in 2012. I went through something called Strategic Coach. And I've talked about it here in the podcast before, where I needed to get disciplined and I needed to figure out how can I build a team of people around me? What are my unique abilities that I can really invest into? So my time that I spend every day is more in my unique ability that gives me energy and less in stuff that drags it out. And the Kolbe score is a big part of it. So we've had every one of our team members here, which we're 15 people now. We'll probably end the year around 20, and we'll keep on growing from there. And the Kolbe score is critical, man. It sounds like your wife is more higher on the follow through, probably lower on quick start, they call it, which is visionary ideas, things like that. I'm an 8 out of 10 on quick start, 2 on follow through. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because we brought this up a lot on the podcast where we're talking about building teams or how do you work with people. And I feel you've always got to have the person who is the visionary, who is the idea person. And you've always got to have the person who can help get things done, who can dive into the details and thrives there. And I know originally I felt that, oh my gosh, if I have someone do that kind of stuff, I don't want them to do that because they're going to be miserable doing it because I'm miserable when I do it. But just like you mentioned there, your wife really loves digging into the spreadsheets and the details, and you don't. And that's so cool that you guys have that dynamic where you've got strengths, she's got strengths, you guys thrive in each other's in your strengths. And that's sweet. I love it, man.
Yeah, I know where my strengths lie. And it's funny, projects will not get started if she's the one that's going to take, spearhead them. Unless it's something like for school or, then she gets or the kid's birthday party. I mean, all these invitations will be beautifully printed and glossy, and they'll arrive at the house like weeks ahead of time before the thing, But when it comes to like, oh, we're going to take down these 20 properties and here's what we got to do. Like, okay, and then she'll put it all together. But I'm like, let's get it done. Here we go. Let's steamroll it.
I love it, man. So let's wrap it up. And I want to leave it with this. I know you're excited about making some certain impact. That's why you left your previous job. That part of your life had its purpose, and you're ready for the next phase. And as you're out there building Morris Invest and building your podcast, man, what is the most exciting thing for you that you wake up in the morning getting fired up about? My guess isn't that it's not specifically real estate. Real estate's probably the vehicle, but what is it that you're crazy excited about putting out there to the world?
We make mistakes at my company, right? And we fix them. We fix any mistake that comes up. So we put out those fires occasionally. But when I wake up, honest to God, my passion is in helping people build financial freedom and build wealth. And I get so furious about the ways in which we've been lied to by these big institutions that tell us that the way to save money is in a 401k, by the way that the company is making money off of, and all these guys are making fees off of. We're lied to. And I get so passionate about wanting to help people build passive income outside of the model that they've been trained to think that's the only way you can do it. Drives me nuts. So there's no, the reason you see commercials for Fidelity and these other things, follow the green line to retirement. They spend millions of dollars to get you to spend money with them. You don't see television commercials for real estate. You don't. Why? Because there's not middlemen. It's building wealth is not sexy. It doesn't have to have all these bells and whistles and TV commercials. So that's what I'm passionate about. Real estate is the vehicle, and passive income is the way to get there. And true legacy wealth is my deep, deep passion for people. I
love it, man. I love it. And guys and gals, please go over to iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast, but find Clayton's podcast, Investing in Real Estate with Clayton Morris. And please dig into that, because if you've resonated with Clayton's message, if you've resonated with really building a portfolio of assets that provide passive cash flow, it's not just for the sake of passive cash flow. It's for the sake of building the life that you really want to live, and the passive cash flow is the vehicle for that. Please dig into that. Hit up Clayton, and if you guys want to work together, sweet. You know where to go, Clayton. MorrisInvest.com, or go to iTunes and listen to the podcast. Clayton, really appreciate you coming on the podcast, dude. I'm excited about sharing your message with people, just because, like I said, it's something that resonated with me big time just in the past month or two when I was digging into your podcast, going, man, even though I'm at this point in my life financially where most people are like, man, I want to get there, I have so far to go on tying down certain other parts of it. And your podcast resonated with me there. So thank you.
Well, my pleasure, and it's been a real treat being on your show as well. Thank you so much, Trevor.
Awesome. Well, guys and gals, head over to MorrisInvest.com and iTunes to check out the podcast. And if you guys have any questions, I'm sure there's a spot somewhere. You can follow them on Facebook and pop some questions in there somewhere, I'm sure. But please, whatever you do, take action on this. Okay, don't just mentally sock it away and file it away and go, someday I'll start my passive cash flow journey. Start that today. No matter what your income is, it might be tying down your personal residence and making sure that that's in the space that it needs to be first. It may be just creating the plan. Whatever it is, take your first step today. And Clayton, thanks for hopping on the podcast, man. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Trevor.